Hey everybody, welcome back to Old World Legends, where we focus on growing the community. I'm your host, Mike, and with me as always is Evan.
I am also here and excited about this brand new Arcane Journal of Cathay, mostly for the lore stuff and the campaign missions and the terrain generation, all that stuff. As I don't play Cathay myself, so I'm not as interested in the magic items. But this Arcane Journal is super interesting because it's actually breaking the pattern. It's not just, hey, we've got an army for you, and here's all the special things that army does. It's actually got a lot of other stuff in here and might make it more
Mhm.
interesting to pick up for people who aren't even playing this army, right? Because these are almost like a White Dwarf article coming out with new rules or new ways to play your army every week, as we've seen in decades ago. There used to be White Dwarfs that kind of did this sort of thing. So
Yeah, there's definitely some truth to
yeah,
that. So I think, right, for everybody watching, this is our first time really diving into kind of an arcane journal. We've been reviewing the army list for quite some time. We still got a few more books to go through, but we've gone through a whole bunch of them, and we're also been making our way through the 1.5 updates. So now we're going to start talking about the rules, the mechanics, that things we're excited about in the arcane journals. And separately, we've been talking about, hey, let's actually, there's some exciting lore, there's some exciting narrative going on in these books. They are expanding what is happening in the old world, in the universe. And so we'll probably do a separate series to dive into that. But today, let's dive in here and talk about some of the latest and greatest stuff.
yeah. So as you were saying, we've definitely been discussing what do we want to do for the Arcane Journals. I know a lot of people out there cover just the rules. Here's some rules. What happened? And yeah, that's cool. And rules are very story driven in the old world because if you have like Killing Blow, for example, and you roll that 6 and you cut someone's head off who's perhaps a scary Chaos Lord, but you just killed them in one lucky strike, as I saw on a recent battle report from Mountain
It
Miniatures,
happens.
Harold Gemmenson, who everyone kind of laughs at as being kind of a joke character, he just rolled Killing Blow against a Chaos Lord and just killed him in one shot, which was amazing.
It's exciting.
Yeah, but so just remember that also there is supposed to be a background and a narrative, and it's not just the Warhammer Fantasy type lore that was here's the history of your faction for thousands of years, have at it in the sandbox of today. It's not just
Hmm.
that, right? It's actually also the story of what's been going on week by week, month by month in the old world leading up to the Great War against Chaos.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so we have some amazing artwork here. We have Miao Ying
Love it.
landing on with their Jade Fleet and her warriors. I know we've
Hmm.
kind of seen this before. You can see in the breakdown here, we do have rules and stuff for Cathay, but it's kind of near the end. Most of it is this kind of lore and this linear campaign stuff that we're going to potentially break it down later. We were discussing this, right? And if I just tell you, hey, here's what happened in the most recent Arcane Journal, it is kind of like jumping into the middle or near the end of a very long story. If you don't know the lore of all the other Arcane Journals, right, then how might you be aware of what episode 37 is, right? Um, We've seen this artwork before in a community article, and I gotta say, I think they should sell posters of this because this would go great on someone's wall. I would use it as a dartboard probably.
It's a pretty incredible artwork, that's for sure. So hopefully they keep making more and more of those. Absolutely beautiful. And I guess that's another thing to point out too: the new art.
Yeah,
Right? I just want to call it out for a moment. Like, we're not just getting great new rules, great new mechanics, expanding the world, expanding the lore. Dude, the old world team is investing resources into incredible new artwork, not only for the covers, but inside the books as well. It's been a long time since we've got new art, and it's not just for Cathay and the new stuff, it's been for all of them as well, which is just awesome. Because again, like, I can't tell you how disappointed I was with, some of the other game systems. Like, really, you use the same cover art for this book as you did for the last one. And so
hmm
love it that we're, and also that it still feels in line with the art from before, from back in fantasy, right? It can just sit right
yeah,
next to it, and it's expanding it. And absolutely, I do wish there have been some websites. GW has partnered up with some other third-party groups to sell prints, high quality prints of some of their high resolution artwork. I don't think they've done that yet for old world. So even if GW doesn't personally release them, I do hope they team up with those groups they already are partnered with and start releasing some of this old world artwork, because you're
yeah.
absolutely right, Evan. This would be awesome to have on the wall.
Just like many of the other Arcane journals, it kind of starts with a lore primer describing some of the things that have been happening recently. Again, we're going to talk about that a bit more later, but something I'm super interested in is essentially this war in the Westerlands. It's Empire versus War's Chaos until the Jade Fleet of Cathay shows up. They talk about some amazing stuff in here about Lorelorn Forest that I'm really, really want to talk about because I'm a big Wood Elf fan. And then we've got,
Hmm.
I mean, I think these maps have been some of the most kind of brain jogging things for me of just getting me really into this lore. So it's actually on a 2 page. So if you view it on the PDF viewer, you only see one at a time, but it's 2 pages here of this grand map and conflict of 4 different forces. The red here is the Warriors of Chaos that are invading. The blue is the Marienburgers from the Empire. And then we have Kralmaw coming up from Reichwald Forest, and he's going north. And then the Jade Fleet is in green. So we kind of have these 4 different forces that are all moving across the lands and all colliding in this kind of Lord of the Rings style massive battle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This section is the lore, specifically a bit more about Cathay and how it interacts with the rest of the world. So it's a lot about like the trade routes and the different passageways. There's a ton of references to the Ogre Kingdoms and the Darklands of the Chaos Dwarves without actually talking about them specifically. It's like, hey, these places exist. Don't ask questions about them.
Not yet, but hopefully future expansions or future updates.
Yes.
And like I said, we'll do separate videos where we do a deeper dive at really analyzing what's the latest news or the happenings in the old world. And these
Right.
arcane journals are fantastic at expanding that and keeping you up to date. So excited to do separate content for those.
And I'm sure everyone is well aware of, we've got some Sky Lanterns here, and here's the mythical crane guns. So you see I mean, I guess it makes sense if you have a gun that's so massive. It's like a swivel gun from history. It's so massive you can't actually carry it yourself, so you have to kind of brace it against something like that. Yeah, and then we have another great, almost pin-up style artwork. You just want to have like a big poster of this on your wall.
Super cool.
Very cool. I think that's, lightning and storm magic is definitely something that we don't see a lot of. The main elements of lightning and kind of storms in the old world already are like the dragon ogres, and the dragon ogre shaggots have kind of some like lightning stuff going on. In fact, it'd be really interesting to know if maybe the Cathayan dragons and the dragon ogres either are similar, or perhaps they have some kind of long lost like rivalry or something like that. I would love to know more about that.
Don't know.
All right, so we have more storms over the Westerlands, and I'm again super interested to talk about this, but we're going to circle on to. I mean, we've got some amazing models here. We've definitely seen these before, and I know a lot of people are talking about, hey, there's a boat back there. Who built that? Yep. Can I have one?
A lot of speculation out there. Was this some proxy thing? Was this parts from just a kit that they cleverly put together? Did they specifically just make this from 3D files of their own? Who the heck knows? All I know is however they made it, I think everybody wants at least 2 of these bad boys.
Yeah, look at these little riggings.
Amazing.
Right? With these like ropes that go from the different, it's like, so that's either a really carefully designed plastic kit or someone just
talented hobbyist on the studio staff, who just did an awesome job.
And you got to think like, wow, so it still goes? Yes. And the reason why we have another section here is that, in case you didn't read all the other sections, here's why you're about to get a bunch of terrain rules. So again, I think one of the things that Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer the Old World does so well is, there's lore, but what does that mean on the tabletop? And can it be something interesting? Can it be narratively focused? So we've got terrain rules for specifically battles in this region. It talks about how you can place things or what size the terrain can be. Now, you could treat this as, so for tournaments, let's update all the tournaments to match some new scope or scale. Or you can just say, hey, you know what? If you want to have a game with your friends, you want to maybe reenact some kind of scenario in this area, use these rules. Maybe they're a little bit different. I got some more stuff going on. I know there's going to be some rules in here about roads and rivers and things like that people may have heard about that are quite interesting. And it does talk about how you can kind of scatter. It says there's different ways to place the terrain. Like if it takes too long to do the player placed, you can like have one person just set it up, the other person scatters some of the pieces, kind of thing. Which is interesting.
But I think the important thing is they're expanding the terrain, which is great. So there are definitely some new rules. I know at our events, we're big believers in terrain. I love to say terrain is the third player, right? When you're playing a game, there's a reason why we play on these battlefields and use incredible looking terrain, because it's way more immersive, right? That's why we use models, not tokens, to play this game.
Exactly.
And so I love that immersive aspect of that. And we have, the core rulebook had a lot of great rules for different terrain out of the gate and some custom terrain. I know we've had a couple other things as we've been slowly expanding our Old World Legends terrain sets, such as adding rules for roads and some other things that I won't go into now, but it's great to see that GW is now the Old World team expanding with some additional terrain rules and such. And maybe you love these rules, maybe they're not for you, but it could spark something in your community about, hey, let's really tell a story. Let's make this a little more custom than just a generic forest or a generic river or generic building. What can we do to just make this more exciting? So I love that they continue to expand this. I do think is a huge differentiating factor for the old world from the other games, whether it's AOS, whether it's 40K, or the other GW games. Terrain in old world is a major player, and I'd love to see that the rules are getting deeper, not getting more shallow. It's
Yeah,
great.
so there's some suggestions for rivers. Now, Mike, you've had two different river tables. One of them's a lava river.
Two different.
There's
Yep.
not a lava river rules in here, but they talk about rules for rivers and how long they should be or how wide they are, and if they're certain width, then they may be impassable or whatever like that. So interesting. Definitely. You definitely want to take some of this with a grain of salt, or just also be like, yeah, but maybe we'll just do it a different way, and that's totally fine. I know that a lot of people, without any guidance or any suggestions from Games Workshop, will just not bring a river, not play it, not have any rules for it, and then they'll just be really bored and sad, and that sucks, right? So if you have this guidelines, great, it helps a lot of people. Now I'm kind of one of the people who I just go out there and make my own stuff, and that's fine too. However, I do love this fast flowing water. Is that if you have like a kind of a fast flowing river and a unit has more than like a quarter of its models are in the river, they have to take a strength test, or they get pushed D3 inches down the river. I think we should start using this rule. That sounds fantastic.
Well, we could, and again, maybe it's not we use it all the time, but again, maybe these are some of the terrain rules that you use that's always on the table, or maybe it's part of a mission or a scenario, right? Where, hey, on round 2 an event or so forth and so on, right? So there's just fun things you can do for this that don't necessarily affect everybody all the time, but it's definitely exciting to try it out. And again, this is one of those things that it's so great to make old world feel fresh all the time, right? And it's not just new armies that are coming out that make it fresh, or new arcane journals and compositions that make it fresh, or different combos of an FAQ, but also mixing up your board, mixing up your scenario you're playing can make, suddenly if you're playing against that friend of yours who you've played a dozen times, suddenly you can make it feel really exciting again from just shaking up your terrain.
We should remember that there's a decent number of people out there who maybe have one or two friends, and these people who are out there love this game, but they don't have unlimited money in the world, so they have one army. Maybe their friend has one army. So every time they play this game, every month or two or something, it's my army is Empire, your army is Chaos, and it's just that's the matchup we're doing every time. So if that's all you got, and you don't have 8 armies like me, and you don't have all these different match play rules or whatever, well, how do we make the games interesting? How do we make it different each time, right? And one of the ways is to have the terrain be interesting, unique, and you could just have a blue piece of paper, cut into the right length to say, hey, this is our river for this game, and if that works for you, that works for you. I know that you might have made some really good, nice rivers, and I've got a river project ongoing right now. We also have rules here for well-maintained roads. Now, I would kind of like to try this one too, because I know that we played it because we had to make up our own rules for roads because they didn't have one. That's similar to this, and they say basically if you start and end your move on the road, you get to move an extra D3 inches. Well, you kind of need to know where you're ending before you know how far you go, but that's a different subject. That's fine. And so basically before you move, you roll the D3 and you're like, cool, I get 2 extra inches, and then you just get to go 5 inches instead of 3 as a dwarf, right? Something like that.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting. We could try that. There's definitely more variants here. Yeah, our version of the rules, before this was released, was basically just the opposite of difficult terrain. Rather than difficult terrain is if at any point during your move you toe into a difficult terrain, your movement value is just reduced by 1. We just went the opposite. If at any point during your movement, except for flyers, you pass over, you touch a road, you toe into a road, you get +1 to your movement characteristic, just to keep it simple. But this is, again, a different take on that, and this is exciting and definitely worth trying. And maybe, again, you could have different roads that have different rules, just as, like you said, we had 2 different rivers. We have a shallow river, we have a lava river. I know I'm working on an ice river too, right? So you could have different types of roads and such. The one road I have right now is a Chaos Dwarf road for that table. So lots of fun things. I hope they keep expanding these terrain rules. I think they're very inspiring, and I think they're really exciting for people to try.
So before people go into this and say it's just D3 inches, like what the hell's the point of that? Well, first of all, we have missions, whether you're playing in a tournament or not, where you're trying to actually get units to either the 4 corners of the board, for example, to get or to get it to a strategic location. So moving just a couple inches from one side of a table quarter to another, like if the river goes down the middle of the table, then you have to cross the river to get to the other side. So if the river blows you down the river or something, then maybe that makes it harder to get to where you're trying to go to. So a couple inches here or there does matter. Or I recently came up with an idea for a narrative mission, which is based on one of the ones from the Dwarf Arcane Journal, I think, where you've got these kind of like carts that you're literally trying to just move the carts off the table. And if you had a road and the carts could then move further because they're literally traveling down a road towards their freedom, then a couple extra inches could be very interesting and exciting. And maybe whether you win or lose the game could come up to that D3 roll. You don't know. And just having that as a possibility in your mind creates a colorful game picture of something to do on the table, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the fact that it is flavorful, immersive rules with the terrain, the battlefield you're fighting on, it just makes that battlefield so much more interesting. And like, we're not just doing a pitched battle in the random of nowhere with a bunch of ruins. Like, this is a specific place with a location, and the rules match the terrain, right? It's the reason what makes the units in Old World feel so good. It's the special rules really match the theme and the flavor and the history of the units. That's what makes them feel great. And once you start applying that to terrain, it's even better.
So there's building rules in here, Mike.
Oh boy, here we go.
So
Woo,
if
hold
you don't
on.
know, these are almost the exact same as the rules for the tower in the core
Yep.
rulebook that everyone skipped over and never used.
Hmm.
I love this stuff. I think this is really great,
Hmm.
especially the tower when you've got like a. So I recently went to Ireland and I saw a 1,000-year-old stone tower that's still there. And the Irish or the local people at the time, who, my ancestors, they used it to spot for Viking raids. And they would go to the top of this tower and they'd just look and be like, oh crap, someone's coming. So towers in the middle of nowhere do exist and they can be critical locations for a local village, for example, to know whether they'll have to evacuate, right? And so,
Hmm.
occupying a building or a tower as a part of a game of Warhammer feels really cool, and I really like that. Um, they came up with the idea here that you can, like in the core rulebook, a tower can only be occupied by unit strength 10 of models, which is really tiny. And if you have a tower in the middle of the board and you play a lot of old world armies, you realize that a lot of people don't have a unit strength 10 or less infantry unit to go into that tower. Like who,
Nope.
if you're playing Skaven, unless you have like 10 plague monks, like who do you have that can actually go in the building? Like
Hmm.
I did that recently. But this one it does change it to 20. So this is more for like farmhouses and stuff like that. Um, but all the rules for templates, shooting in and out of buildings and stuff like that are basically the exact same. If you assault the building, you just move into base contact with it, and then you just roll your attacks on either side. If the people in the building roll a flee result, so like a break and flee, then they just all get cut down. That's what happens. So instead of trying to do this whole like move 2d6 out of the building on one side and then the enemy, how would they chase you? They wouldn't be able to because there's a building in the way. You just get killed. So it's
Hmm.
kind of risk, high reward, which is fun. I think that's really interesting.
Yep, definitely great. We definitely have a lot of buildings. A lot of our impassable terrain are buildings, and
Yeah.
so looking for opportunities to start using those in the future with building rules. And definitely, I know one of our focuses for 2026 is more building terrain, perhaps ones that you might siege. So excited to see some of
Ooh.
these here and
Did
where
you
we
just
take
did you just
those
drop the
in the
castle
future.
hints? Did you just mention
I,
castles?
I didn't say, I did not say that word. And there's a long journey ahead of us. We're not ready yet, but excited for the future.
I don't know. Did I ever mention on the show before that I wrote like 4 pages of siege rules?
You write a lot of rules. So, yes. So we'll see. We'll see what 2026 brings. But we're talking about the Arcane Journal right now.
Yeah, I want that. So all of these building rules here, Mike, by the way, are pretty similar or basically exactly the
Yeah.
same as what I
Mhm.
suggested we do for sieges, where like an individual wall section basically works exactly like this. People can charge it, they try to attack it, and then you roll
But
the
it's
dice and see what
great to
happens.
see
Right?
these in here in
Yeah.
particular to your point, because again, a lot of the community, not just our community but out there, but people prefer less homebrew rules, and they prefer more like, no, these are the rules the game makers
Yeah.
intended to play with. So even if you take these rules and you expand off of them, players just, I generally, my experiences with communities all over the country, all over the world, is that if you're starting from the foundation of what the game makers intended, they just feel much better about that. It's like, yep, clearly this is the direction that they wanted to go. So I'm all in. This sounds great. Let's do it. Versus like, here's my homebrew campaign. Generally speaking, it's harder to get buy-in on those things. So it is great to see GW is starting to support this stuff. And I sure do hope they do release formal, like expand this into full siege rules again. They had them in the past. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see it at some point in the future.
Yeah. Or, just write your own. Okay.
Also an option.
So we have a wasteland terrain generator, and I know what you're thinking, Mike. You're thinking, who is going to spend an hour before the game rolling to see whether we're going to put something on a table and then go, oh, wait, did you bring your fishing village with you to the game store? Oh, you didn't?
The fishing village sounds awesome, though.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Sure, rolling on the table and trying to make sure, and imagine you roll 7 saltwater bogs. Okay,
Yeah,
but do I have that many?
I care less about the random terrain generator, more about here are just some really cool pieces of terrain ideas that you can go like, hey, let's make a wasteland terrain set or board, and here's some great things that feel appropriate and thematic to it. I love that.
Well, for example, you've got the hill, and this one, it's not just a regular hill. It says it can have a rock-strewn slope, which counts as difficult or dangerous terrain. The hills that I actually made for my board at home, I have all kinds of these little like rocky cliff faces, and whenever I play with someone, I always mention, oh, should we play those as difficult, or do you find that too annoying? Because I think it's kind of interesting if you have kind of one particular face of the hill, it's kind of rocky and harder to approach from, and it gives you kind of a more defensible position, or makes it harder for people to kind of outflank you on one of the sides of the hill, for example. And so there's some validation for my insanity of coming up with that myself here with this idea. But you can also treat this table, Mike, as, okay, we want to have a narrative event that's taking place in this location of the world. Maybe we should make a shallow stream piece of terrain, or a track, or a woods that matches what they describe it here as, or this hill with the rocky scope. And when we make one of each of these, we can then start using them on the table with how they're described here, and that helps kind of reinforce the idea that we're in one part of the world and not some other part of the world. Now,
absolutely,
most people don't have such a wide, and even I don't have such a wide variety of terrain that if someone said, oh, you rolled a 9, you get a scrubland, I already have a thing that's great for that. I don't, but I want to. So this is also an aspirational thing. I think people should accept out there that, Warhammer is kind of an aspirational hobby, where it's like, it's not just about what you can literally do or what's really easy. It's just about what you want to eventually do. And that's one of the things Sieges definitely is. It's like, yes, I want to spend 3 weeks 3D printing a castle and then trying to figure out how to play with it.
And sometimes it's not about an individual doing all these things. It's about a community coming together and, and collaborating on projects in order to accomplish some of these goals.
Yes. Okay, then if that was not enough for you, Mike, there is one for the Shadowlands too.
I love this book so much. I gotta admit, don't get me wrong, the other Arcane Journals for this one were great, but now that they're like, okay, they're past the initial release of, okay, we've hit all the basic armies, now we're into designer fun land from the old world team, where they're like, you know what, here's just an awesome idea I had for this cool thing. It didn't fit in these other core army books. We're gonna keep releasing more Arcane Journals to release more great content. This is so awesome. This is one of my favorite Arcane Journals today.
Right.
And remember, we see more of these.
If your favorite army is Lizardmen, or if your favorite army is, Empire or something like that, this is just one place with one Arcane Journal with one expansion of some stuff. The next one is Cetra's invasion of the Border Princes, which, by the way, is probably going to have more of this. It's probably going to have a terrain generator for Border Princes in it.
Probably.
And so it'd be great to see the differences. And Mike, you have for your events all these different themed tables. Well, eventually you could incorporate some of these rules for the terrain into, okay, when you play on the Westerland table, you use some of those results, and when you play on the Shadowlands table. And so, obviously, and for example, I'm reading this, and I've never really considered before. So how exactly am I going to get a chasm? Like, would I just maybe like make a piece of terrain that's like a black hole of, please, don't fall in there. It won't end well for you, right?
Oh yeah, well, that's exactly what you do. Effectively, you have to paint on the illusion, right? And such. So it's no different than we pretend that the river that the river is really deep, or the lava river is really deep because of the colors on top of it. You just paint. Nope, this is where it goes down. It goes from light color to black, and that's a chasm. So yes, basically it's an inverse river for all intents and purposes.
Right, and keep in mind also that a lot of the rules in here, they're not that overwhelming. So we have dense wood. So in the Shadowlands, you have dangerous terrain on a 1 or a 2, not just the usual 1. That's it. So it's, the woods are kind of so thick and scary that, stuff happens, right?
Yeah, typically what happens, I love the terrain and I love the stuff, but unless it's like really big, it's hard. It's a lot to remember your army, remember your opponent's army, focus on the scenario, and remember custom terrain rules. Typically, my experience has been each terrain set, players can really focus on one specific type of unique terrain element for this board. If you have more than one, they're gonna forget about it. It's too many things. But like, hey, there's a big river on this table. We get it. Like it's clear, and they remember the river rules. But at least that's been my experience at events. Because remember, different if you're at home, right? And you're playing with some of your buddies and you're playing it over and over again. There's a lot more depth you can add to that. But yeah,
Well,
that's
keep
always
in
the
mind
challenge.
also that the thing about playing at an event, it's for one, you're playing often against a stranger or someone like that, and
Often,
maybe you
yeah,
need to you
or a
don't know
new
their armor
friend.
super well, so you're already kind of trying to focus on just remembering their army's rules. If you're playing against a Cathay player for the first time, you're like, wait, what are you doing? How does this work? I'm so
Yeah,
confused.
how many? To 17 armies now, plus all the Arcane Journal variants. I
Yes.
love it. I love this game so much. So
I
much
I
depth.
absolutely do too. But again, I think it's a good point though. If you find this a little bit too overwhelming, one thing you could do is just have one of these. It's like you
One.
could have
Pick one.
a tower in the middle, or you can have a river going through the middle, or you can have a single bottomless pit over there on the left. Don't go there.
Yep.
Right? That's fine.
Yep.
Okay. And interesting. So we have it kind of usually all the colored artwork is all in one section. So we actually have some mixes up here. Where we have some colored
Mhm.
artwork here.
I love more
Um,
artwork. That's okay.
Yeah, I think we have some more Empire buildings in the background. Obviously, Cathay has come to the Empire's rescue because the Empire can't defend itself, evidently.
Wow, wow. I don't think
Yeah.
Empire players are going to put up with that nonsense.
Hey,
We'll
I'm
see
an
what
Empire
happens.
player, okay? And I'm probably bringing Knightly Order. And I'm probably not just bringing Knightly Order to the next tournament, Mike. I'm probably bringing Fiery Heart, which everyone would rightly never play. So that's okay. So we have rules for multiplayer games, which I've heard bad talked about, but this is something that we might need to use at doubles, or we might totally ignore, because all it's really saying is just that if you have a single army controlled by multiple people, you can divide it into even portions, or if you have an alliance, it tells you to use the allies rules, but we've already covered how that's kind of, for one thing, it's complicated to remember what uneasy and suspicious even do, and secondly, it
Mhm.
then really reduces, okay, I already have to try to find a time of the week where I can get four people who can all show up at my house at the same time. I've done this once. It was hard. And then
Difficult.
second, what are we supposed to just pick armies that are technically allowed to be allied to each other? Even
Yeah,
though
not realistic.
because like I was playing with my friend Eric and his dad, and his dad only plays Chaos, and Eric's really jazzed about playing Cathay right now, so he was Cathay and Demons of Chaos on one side versus I was playing Wood Elves and my friend was playing Tomb Kings, and I was like, I think that was fine. We didn't need it to be, oh, we have trusted allies over here, being best friends, right?
Yep. But for people who do want to play with those rules, it's great that they have them,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
And by the way, this King is Dead Trophies of War. This is exactly what they wrote about playing doubles in the match play guide. They just kind of copy and
Yep.
pasted it. It's
And
one
again,
player is the main general, the other person's like a secondary general who's not as important.
but it's good that it's here because again, not everybody who buys this book will have bought the match play guide,
Right.
especially if you're more focused on the narrative or your smaller group of friends. So it's cool.
So not a lot of people have talked about this either. So they've actually tried to tell you, hey, if you want to get more into the narrative concept of playing Old World, here's
Mhm.
something you could do. You can have linked battles. You can have a series
Love
of,
it.
of games in a row, and the outcome of each game affects the next game. Now, this would be great for a group of 2 or 3 friends to play together over the course of several weekends. It doesn't necessarily map very well onto 25 people in a room who all want to try to play at least 3 games a day against each other in a larger campaign. That this maps on better to a small gaming group who meet up once a week. And
Mhm.
what it is you've got 3 different scenarios. Now, most of the Arcane Journals have scenarios in them, but this one actually
Yep.
has 3, and each one is just like the others. It's an asymmetrical narrative battle. We talked about that in our recent narrative video.
Mhm.
But that well, at least the second and third one have if you won the first game, here's something you get for the second game. So it
Mhm.
gives you a kind of an ongoing reward for the events of the previous game. So the first one is that you've got like 2,500 points of Warriors of Chaos attacking 1,000 points of Empire, and then to the rescue comes 1,500 points of Cathay. Now that's really great if you have 3 people, or if the Cathay player has 2 armies, right? That'd be awesome. And this would be really cool to reenact. I would love to do that. Actually, what's amazing, Mike? It also gives you a vague idea of what the terrain's supposed to look like. I don't know if we've seen a lot of that in the other Arcane Journals before.
Not as much, but it might be something that they start doing going forward, in particular because they want to highlight some of the new terrain in this book. So we might see this in the next Arcane Journal too.
Yeah, like the saltwater bog is pretty
Right.
dangerous. So
Fishing village, right? They're calling out
yeah,
like, hey, this is some of the like, here's some custom terrain rules, thematic terrain rules. Here's how you could incorporate it into this battle, which is great. Or just don't, you don't have it, don't use it. But if you have it, awesome, even better.
Yeah, so it tells you about deployment. There's very often a situation where like one player will deploy their whole army, and then the other player deploys their whole army afterwards, which by the way can be quite convenient for just a casual weekend game instead of doing the whole like, you go one, I go one, which takes an extra 10 minutes, and we all want to kind of just start playing, right? So that kind of thing.
Mhm.
We've got some. I'm sure you probably love this, Mike. Right? We got some amazing artwork here where we have a
So
Shigengan
cool.
general fighting against a Manticore Chaos Lord. That looks great.
Yeah, that Manicore looks awesome. Yeah, we have an older Manicore model. I know there's a newer AOS model, but that's clearly a Chaos Manicore. Love it.
I really wish we would see more Chaos Lord on Manticore. I think that it's you don't always have to be on the dragon. Just saying.
The Manicore is a great mount, especially with, just pass those leadership checks. It's not so bad.
So the second one is another battle, and if you just focus on this section real fast, is that if you won the first game, you get to re-roll a d6 on Gaze the Gods table, right? So that'll be for the War's Chaos. And if the defender won, if they're War Machine, they can re-roll an artillery dice. So
Yeah.
again, it's not like a huge bonus, but it's just like, oh hey, remember how last week I won this game, whatever. And so these are the kinds of things that I'm trying to incorporate into the narrative events that we're going to run. But
Yeah.
it's just that, can I copy all of this stuff exactly? Not really. So
That's okay, but it's inspiring, right? Again, it's not a full, here's a whole like 40K crusade rules system, so forth
Yeah.
and so on.
Right.
But it is a start to something that could expand into that in the future. And definitely it is great for us, now that and we'll cover it more in other videos, are starting to look at trying to figure out how do we run a narrative event, right? Great tidbits, starting points to inspire communities to build off of. And that
Right.
Friedel artwork, oh, that is
Yeah, I
just
was gonna
go back
say,
to
do
that.
you like
How
this?
cool is that? That is just like, holy crap. She is a powerhouse. This is such a cool piece of artwork.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I'm really
She's
really
awesome.
hoping to get to see someone bring bring her real model, or bring her official model to our narrative event, because
Oh, I
she's
have
gonna be
one.
pretty
It's
important.
amazing. Yeah.
Okay, well if no one
Yeah,
else does, then you're gonna have to bring it. So
that's fine.
because yeah.
Or just someone could borrow it. That's fine too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and yeah, there's a third one, and it has another thing in here where, like, for example, if Chaos won, they get to bring an extra 500 points. Now, it is a 3,500 point battle, or at least it's supposed to be. So bringing an extra 500 wouldn't be that big, but I mean, this would take you all day, right? Now, again, people might be wondering, who the heck is ever going to have time or interest in playing this? Well, me, but also there's a secondary purpose of these. The secondary purpose is to infect people like me with the desire to want to make stuff like this happen and write their own rules, or bring their own events, or build an entire army of Knights Panther just out from scratch because I want to, vibe with this particular situation that's happening, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Warhammer, the old world, is very inspirational in just reading these stories, hearing these scenarios, the lore, the canon, the artwork, the creativity. It's just inspiring, right? And then you get to go off and get creative and collaborate with others and just come up with cool stuff.
Yeah. And so obviously having, magic weapons, magic items, or special rules for your army creates and tells a story on the tabletop. It doesn't feel the same to play Knights of the White Wolf versus playing Grand Army Empire. They're two very different things. And so the Arcane Journals have given people the ability to tell their own story by doing it that way. But you can also tell a story in much more of a literal sense, and pick an army not because it's good or it's powerful, but because it fits with what's happening in the world. And we're gonna have some more videos talking about this. I'm gonna come up with some examples of what does a thematic army list look like, right? That kind of thing. But we're gonna continue with Jade Fleet. So it's interesting, right, Mike? Also, this is like the end of the book. Like, only the last 15% of it is all this stuff. Most of it was, hey, don't you guys like narrative stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do, and I think they're just looking for communities are looking for ways to incorporate more of that into their experiences, right? And you can still like competitive and narrative are not antithesis, right? It's looking for ways to bring those together to create a format that people get excited about. How do you get more people to show up to your event, not less? And I think there's absolutely a way to do that.
Right. So first of all, we have the Jade Fleet. Now, there's not a ton of differences here. We've got Miao Ying, instead of just saying one Dragon Lord, which, I mean, there was only one at the moment anyway.
For now.
The other limitations for characters are exactly the same as they were before. The only things that are different from the Grand Army here, Mike, is that you don't have the 0-1 Sky Lantern in special or the 0-1 Sentinel in special, depending on who your general is. That's
Okay.
not in here. But the thing you do get in exchange, which is very much worth it, is 33% of your army can be spent on mercenaries, and you have Captain of the Empire, Master Mage, Priest of Sigmar, Priest of Ulrich. So at a 2,000 point army, or bigger, you would have at least 2 or 3 of those dudes running around.
Mm-hmm.
Priests in particular, very useful. I need to read whether their prayers can only target Empire models. I don't think they say that, so I think they can cast their reroll to hit prayers on some Jade Warriors and stuff. Then you have state troops, missile troops. We have some, again, crossbowmen would potentially be a pretty useful unit to bring. Empire archers, some amazing chaff unit. I almost always put in my Empire armies. And Cathay, incredibly lacking in that area. How do I have little units of chaff that can run around and
Yeah, and I think to your point, not only is just really creative by the GW staff, it is interesting, and it feels like they are tackling clearly the vast majority. It certainly appears from our perspective, at least as far as we know, the communities, not just our own, but those around the world, have not embraced allies as a competitive format or comp that they want to see at their events. And part of the main reason of that is effectively it plugged too many holes too freely, too openly in armies and created some really unfortunate combos because it was just too much of an open system. But mercenaries have been embraced pretty much by every community because they've been fairly well limited and balanced.
Yeah.
And like, yep, bring whatever you want. And so this isn't here's a Cathay army plus an ally. It's like, nope, here's a Cathay army, and a big theme of this army are the mercenary troops you're bringing, which are very much embraced and accepted by the communities around the world. But more importantly, it hasn't been conveyed. It's exactly, I think, what people want. It's not, you have access to the entire other army book of this faction, come up with the most horrific combo you could come up with to combo with your thing. Nope, it's very specifically crafted and catered to, this is the areas of bonuses or additional troops or units you're going to get. And clearly they've put some thought and thinking into these, feel like appropriate thematic fits, and hopefully I'm not immediately seeing any combo breaking lists or things yet. That being said, that doesn't mean one isn't there and someone just has, we just haven't found it yet. But it's a good approach. It's a healthy approach.
You and I are going to have another video going over like exactly, tournament FAQs and stuff, because there's some fun questions that this book brings up.
That will take longer.
Yeah. And that'll be a separate video because we haven't even discussed those yet. But it is very good. You can bring Outriders. That's I think Outriders are a very good unit for the points cost. Cathay does not have a small arms fire shooting unit right now, and just bringing 2 units of 5 Outriders, it just by itself makes a lot of sense. Now, in order to bring them, you have to bring less Sky Lanterns or less Sentinels or artillery pieces. So maybe you and your opponent can both be happy and do that, right? So that's always good. I think that right now, obviously, they're trying to build around the fact that Cathay has a very limited model selection. And so they've come up with a narrative reason for Empire forces to be, in here with the whole Jade Fleet. We just scrolled past and briefly discussed why, the Jade Fleet would be allied with Empire right now. So, and Marion Burke itself would obviously have access to these kind of troops. So it makes perfect sense. We don't have any of the Lord level characters from Empire, and we don't have any of the, Steam Tank or Hellblaster Volleygun, those kind of more like kind of strong units in here. So it's mostly just kind of vanilla Empire. I'd say the Outriders are the only thing that's a little bit like, well, it's a little strong, but okay.
Yep, but feels good. Feels good.
So we have special rules.
Love them.
Okay. You get to have extra range on your pistols or handguns.
That's powerful.
So I guess it applies to the Outriders.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the handgunners that you could bring, and the pistolier pistols. That's
repeater pistols. Absolutely. 3 more inches on that. That's great.
So okay, now let's go to something bad. So once per game, a unit or detachment of the state missile troops can fire in 2 ranks. Cool. But you do realize that these guys are cumbersome, or ponderous, whichever one it is, where -2 if I move or anything. So if I deploy my unit in 2 ranks deep, I get to fire in 2 ranks once, and then the second time I want to shoot, I'm like, oh. So I either have to reform and be -2 to hit, or I just don't shoot with half the unit. So the fact that this is once per game, it really doesn't map on well to the fact that the unit is like stuck in whatever form it deploys in. and I don't know if they
None
know
of the
that.
units are drilled?
So you can be drilled, right? But you still have to be moving. So if I have handgunners who move
True.
with, and then
Yep.
they're going
You'll
to
still get the
then,
penalty. It's
yeah.
valid.
So
Yep.
when are they ever going to redeploy without suffering the -2 that other time? So it's like, why don't you just let
Mm-hmm.
them fire in 2 ranks all the time? Who cares? They're
Well, they're
handgunners.
trying to find balance. Yep, but perhaps it is a little too timid on this one. All
Yeah,
right.
but it's the
Moving
same in
on.
the Nuln. It's the same rule. So then we have the Jade Warriors and Lancers. When they're within 3 inches of a mercenary unit, can reroll to hit rolls of 1. Okay.
That's great.
Well. One of the problems, Mike, is can you just take an Empire Captain mercenary and stick him in the same unit so they're always within 3 inches of him?
Well, we have to FAQ what they're allowed to
Yeah.
or not. I mean, of
Yeah.
course, my immediate gut reaction would be no, your mercenary heroes cannot join your main units. I believe that is how it is intended to be played. But further research and conversation need to be happening, and we do need to release a proper FAQ update to account for these situations. As I
Okay.
assume other communities are handling it as well. They have to update their FAQs.
So then you can put your Sky Lantern in ambush for 15 points.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. I think that would be
Yeah.
great, especially in the narrative context of, in fact, in the story, it talks about how the Sky Lantern fleet went out and kind of fought the wolf ships of Frydal, and so maybe the Sky Lanterns are actually offshore and they're busy, and when a battle on land happened, they're like, oh no, we better go and reinforce them, right? So they're actually kind of coming in from somewhere else, and they have to kind of catch up.
Yeah. I don't think it worked great for that Sky Lantern. It looked like it crash landed. Yeah, unfortunate.
If only this happened more. I would love it if the Sky Lantern had rules similar to like the monsters that
Like
in
Timber?
other editions. Well, I did not like Timber. I'm saying like if it took a certain amount of damage, it would kind of land and then it would just shoot from where it was, but not be super mobile. Like if it was under half wounds, it didn't get to move around.
I'm confident they will update the lanterns in a future FAQ. I do not know how they will tackle the situation, but anyway, let's focus on this Arcane Journal.
Okay, so we have lots of weapons in here. We've got, Sword of Reason. Whenever I see you got a weapon that's strength +2, AP2, I go, cool. So it's not worse than my default weapon. Although Cathay doesn't have great weapons, so
They don't. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But we do have strength +2, AP2, killing blow. I, for the love of God, wish I could put this on my Grand Master of the Empire. He would love this weapon. It's way better than a Brune Fang for less points. But it also gets a killing blow on a 5 or a 6. This is a pretty good weapon.
That's a pretty good weapon.
I'd say the main downside,
yeah.
The main downside of the weapons for Cathay is that you only really want them on a Shugengan General or a Shugengan Lord, and so a lot of the time you don't know if you want to spend it on that or the wizard stuff. Like you only have one or the other.
Yep, it's hard to have everything. Yep, but it's definitely it has potential to compete with an ogre blade for sure, and it's also only 65 points.
So the Brazen Blade gives you strength +1, AP1. So basically like a Sword of Might that also has multi-wounds 2. And then if you roll a 6 to wound, they don't get a ward or regen. So it's almost like having Armor Bane, but against wards and regens. And hey, if you roll the 6 to wound, then I guess they still get their armor save though, right? So it says ward regen. So it'd only be AP1 against the armor.
Yep. Okay. So it has downsides. It's not just if it was armor as well, it'd be like an auto take, right? Or if it had AP -2, it'd be like even one more buff in any one of these categories would make that an auto take sword. So I think they're threading the fine line, or threading the needle on. It's good, but it's not an auto take.
Yeah, I think that both of these are better weapons than any of my Empire characters can buy. Wrath of Zhen Yang, so another S +1 -1 from AP and armor, and then we have armor main 1 flaming attacks, magical attacks, and then it just turns off regen saves, which is kind of what all flaming attacks used to do. Seeing as how a lot of characters these days are like, is there any possible way for me to have 3 saves? Please let me do that. And a lot of the books out there just let people buy regen saves. I think that could potentially also be a very good weapon. Keep in mind that I think Cathay has their default weapon is strength +1, AP1. It's the like the regular blade that they generally take. So it's not any worse than their usual weapon. It just kind of doesn't.
Turning off regeneration saves is actually, there's not a lot of that in the game. There's very little of that. So that is very powerful because, to your point, almost everybody on their characters is putting a regen save on them in addition to their ward save. So being able to just shut that off, that's powerful.
Yeah. Sword of Nangao. So again, so here's a good example of, hey, if you want to have a more thematic Cathay list, Miao Ying comes from Nangao, so if you wanted to have a Jade Master or one of the, what are they called? The Gatekeepers, right? What if you could give your
Yeah, Gatekeeper.
Gatekeeper the Sword of Nangao? So maybe it doesn't necessarily make sense for him to take it. In fact, if Miao Ying's your general, you would already have Hatred Warriors of Chaos. But just maybe it just makes thematic sense to put that on a guy, right? And it's AP3. I love that. Having extra AP on people, very rare and very useful. Having Hatred against a very good army, especially keep in mind the following, right? If the enemy has high weapon skill, Hatred is more useful. So if it's Hatred Undead and their weapon skill 2 a lot of the time, that's not as important as Hatred versus Warriors of Chaos, where every single guy's weapon skill 5, right?
Yep. It is Warriors of Chaos specifically, not all Chaos. So
Yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
affect
that's
Beastmen.
true. That's true. So Jade Armor of Beishai. So this gives you a 5-up ward save and MR2. So you wouldn't need this on a Shigengen because they already have the ward and they can't get an armor any better. But this would go great on your Gatekeeper, Gatemaster guy. Give him the ward save and MR2 for his unit.
That's a great piece of armor. It's full plate. You don't often like the really good ones are only so full plate plus the ward save plus MR2 for 40 points. That is a steal.
Yeah. We have Talismans here. One of my latest things, especially because of the Cathay meta, is to see where can I find a -1 to hit from shooting. So we have one right here, 35 points.
Yep.
This character in the unit get -1 to hit from shooting. Amazing.
That's on par with the other ones in the game. Yep. For right now, pretty much an auto take. Yep.
Yeah. Now again, Undead doesn't care, or Tomb King specifically don't care about that. But I think you're more worried about all the other shooting in the game, to be honest. Vermilion Quill is kind of a funny one. You get to reroll to hit and to wound during combat phase for 25 points. That's really, really good if you're also taking the Dragon Slayer sword, where you have the one guy who has one of these at least, and for one turn you can increase your chances of rolling Monster Slayer massively. Because if you're Strength 4 base and you're attacking a Toughness 6 monster, you have to wound on 6s. You reroll all fails, so it basically doubles your chance of monster slaying somebody.
Yeah, but you combine this with something else, and you could combine this with the Overblade, couldn't you? Right,
yes.
75 plus this.
You could.
So that's a great combo. So again, it's just like the Orcs and Goblins, one hit wonder, and the one use items are powerful. Sometimes you just need that slight edge to win this one critical combat or cast that one critical spell, and it will have a large ripple effect for the rest of the game.
So magical banners over here are often they can kind of turn your unit into something totally different. I imagine that a lot of the ones in here will be something like that because, with Cathay, all we got really have is Jade Warriors and Jade Lancers. If you want infantry and cavalry, those are your only two options. So we need banners to try to make them more unique, right? For example, in the Orcs and Goblins one, you can have like a banner that gives you Frenzy, right? And that kind of makes your unit totally different. So the first one is Flaming Attacks and Impact Hits 1. Now your whole unit having Impact Hits is kind of funny. I don't know if it's worth that many points, but it's kind of funny.
Well, the Flaming Attacks isn't great, but the Impact Hits is good. But keep in mind, you're going at the Impact Hit of your base strength, not of your strength of your weapon. So you'd be impacting hit even with your Lancers at Strength 3, not Strength 4.
Yeah. So then we have the next one is Grand Banner Superiority, or at least that's what this part of the text says. The Jade Banner is +2 combat result. I think this one...
Typo.
For only 15 more points than a War Banner, it's basically just twice as good. That's fine.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
Next one is Shroud of Shiyama, which gives you Fear, and if you already had Fear, you get Terror. Now, I don't know anyone who would already have had Fear, so basically it's going to give you Fear. It also gives you Immune to Fear, and that's quite useful. It gives you Immune to Terror tests, so if you get charged by a terror-causing unit, you wouldn't have to take the test.
25 points, it's a good banner.
If you have a bunker of more than 400 points of guys and you're not immune to terror, you are doing something wrong.
Yep. I mean, honestly, if it was 15 points, it'd probably be an auto take. At 25, it's definitely worth considering.
Yeah. But yeah, kind of have to have enough unit strength worth of models for Fear to kind of do basically anything.
Yeah, it's for that one big Lancer unit or one big Anvil infantry unit, right? So you put it on what's your Anvil? What's going to hold the line?
The Banner of Jun Wen, enemy units that want to stand and shoot or fire and flee have to take a leadership test first. Now, most people are just going to pass the leadership test. So I just don't think that's that amazing. I mean,
no,
it's fine. On your unit of Jade Lancers in particular, you don't want to get shot by Iron Drakes, but then again, they're leadership 9, so they're just going to pass, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Not super applicable.
People have probably heard of this already because, dear God, why did they do this? Ring of Jet, extremely common. So just take as many as you want. Not one per model, but each one is... You get to cast Unquiet Spirits with power level 2. So Unquiet Spirits is a magic missile that goes off at an 8+. So that means this is the old Ruby Ring that you only need to roll a 6 on the dice. Unquiet Spirits is arguably a better spell than Fireball, because it's 3d6 hits instead of 2, and it's ignore all armor saves. So Unquiet Spirits just nukes Empire Knights like freaking crazy. Like, they just all die. It's like Vile Tiding them. Okay?
Yeah, I think making it extremely common perhaps is a mistake, and time will tell if that's true or not. I know everyone's been talking about this a lot. It's a very controversial topic. We'll see in the upcoming months if this ends up becoming a big problem.
Yeah. So Golden Line, remember how we said, hey, you don't want to take fear tests? Maybe just take this instead. You put on your captain or whatever, you get fear, panic, rally, or terror. You get to reroll it. It's almost like veteran. So veteran would be all of those.
Almost.
But also like screams. So I guess it's not veteran. I don't know why they refuse to give Cathay units veteran, but they do.
Reasons.
Yeah. Fire Nangao is a breath weapon. Okay.
Cool.
I love using the flame template. I'm super jazzed whenever I get
flame
to do it.
template for strength 4 -2 AP. That's actually magical. Quite good. That hits hard.
Mike, you know who you can put this on?
Who?
You can put this on a magistrate who's on the Sky Lantern.
Yep. Yep.
And then you can template somebody with the bombing run, and then you can breathe fire on them, and then you can reserve move away, and then you can throw bombs at them.
Yeah, but also just putting on a Shogungan Lord that could just position himself perfectly to get the maximum number of hits with the flame template could be very effective.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, arcane items. So the Clockwork Compass, instead of making a wizardly dispel attempt, you automatically dispel it with no roll required, and all remains in play goes away. I mean, it's kind of expensive for that, but it is. I think if you're going to take a Shugengen General and you don't even care about casting magic, like, you might just take this just because you want to be able to stop one particular spell, that kind of idea. Right?
This is so powerful. I think you are under seeing the potential of this. That one SO crystal column, or that one horrible thing that's on, it's not just shut a spell down. You can just boom, get rid of that vortex, or that boom, get rid of that ethereal or whatever. Just being able to automatically shut off a powerful remains in place spell, that is huge. That is huge. Yes, it's 50 points, but I'm telling you, that could be a game-winning item if used at the right time.
Okay, so
of course, you could also play an opponent who doesn't have any remains in place spells.
That's true, yes.
So contextually, it could win you games. It could also be not applicable.
So we've got, and just keep in mind though, if you do take items that, like give you magic resistance and then you play against dwarves, that's fine. It's fine, man.
It's fine.
Yeah, that person already has a weakness for not being able to engage in one section of the game. So just because you took something that was good against magic and the other person doesn't have it, that doesn't mean that you wasted those points. It means that you were prepared for multiple scenarios, which is fine.
Yep. In particular, if you're showing up to an event, being able to take on all comers lists is important.
Right.
All right, what do we got left? Let's keep going.
So the Seal of Jingpo, however you pronounce that, discard 2 randomly generated spells instead of 1, and get 2 signatures. I freaking wish I could do that on most of my elf characters, but no.
That's a great item. There's a lot of armies. I'd love that with my necromancer, my undead, with my necromancers, with vampire counts.
Vampire counts would love this. They'll love the crap out of this.
But demons too they can't. Like, there's multiple armies that would love this item. It's a great item.
And you know who else loves it is Cathay, because they have some of the best signature spells in the game.
They're really good.
Some of them are spread across Yang or Yin, because if you pick one of each, it'd be great. But which Miao Ying can do, I think. But still, some amazing signature spells, take them. Which, by the way, is another reason to use lower level wizards, because you're like, cool, I just pick the spell. I always get to pick my spell. It's always the signature. It's always really good. It's fine.
With 25 points on a level 2 wizard, and you know the 2 signature you're getting every time, great combo.
That's pretty damn... Oh, that's annoying.
That's a great combo.
All right, Scroll of Wei Jin. They know 1 extra spell, and they can only cast it. So they already have a 15-point item that does this. So I guess you can take the 15-point item and the 10-point item, and then you know 6 spells instead of 4 for 25 points.
But again, for 10 points though, right? Take that level 2 and roll 3 dice. You know 3 spells, discard 2 of them. Great combo.
Yeah, and they already had a 15-point item that did that. But okay.
Here's a 10-point one.
Yes.
Even better.
So we finished it. Now, for some people, that was anemic. There's not a lot in there. But for me, I'm like, you skipped 90% of the book.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's awesome. I think they've done a great job with this. I think it's providing more content, more food as a whole for the community and for expanding it. And I really hope we see more of these in the upcoming Arcane Journals. Don't get me wrong, I love these alternate army lists, and they had one here. They're going to have more of them. But dude, if we got one of these like every other month, you know, a couple months and over the next year for going into 2026 and closing on 2025, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
That would be so cool. I hope we see more of these.
All right.
All right,
So
everyone,
thanks everyone
closing
for
words.
yeah. Thanks for sticking with us through this whole thing. I know a lot of people may not have been as interested in that first part, but hey, that's what we're doing here. We're actually covering the whole old world, not just the rules part. And you know, I just want everyone out there to stay legendary. By the way, just let us know, what do you think about this format. Obviously, we're doing this Arcane Journal stuff for the first time. We're going to go back and try to cover some of the lore from the ones we've missed so far and give everyone, you know, get everyone caught up. I would love it if everyone was as interested in, hey, what's happening in the world? Who are the characters? What do they care about? What are their motivations? As I am, because I'm super motivated by that, right?
Yep. And if you're not into reading it, we will help walk you through it and tell you about the cool stuff that we're excited about. Right. We'll see you all next time.